Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. You've just tuned into Women's AM. This morning I am joined by sisters Sharmin, Laika and Lisa to inshallah talk about Ikhlas, sincerity. But Sister Lisa, mashallah, we kind of caught up and you've been on the show in our previous series, so it's been quite a while since we last saw you. And mashallah, you're a chartered accountant, but you've taken some time out. What else are you doing now with your time?
So I've taken a year out, mainly doing Islamic studies, and alhamdulillah I went on Hajj recently, so that was a very good experience.
Oh, mashallah, that's really lovely. So it's really good then, as a sort of a student of Islam, then you can tell us the sort of perspective of how things have changed for you when looking at this topic of Ikhlas, because I'm sure perceptions have changed since you started studying. So alhamdulillah, we've got your fresh eyes to kind of take advantage of today, inshallah. Well, without further ado, let's get on with today's discussion in her views. To follow Islam is to follow it completely and know that it's for our benefit to have true sincerity in our intentions when we practice our faith and deal with others. Today, we'll be exploring the meaning of Ikhlas and how it coincides with our daily lives as Muslims. Remember, this is a live discussion, so if you want to join in, please do call in. The number is on your screens now, or you can tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM15. Sister Lisa, I'm going to come to you first. What does Ikhlas or sincerity mean to you?
So first, I think it's useful to look at the dictionary definition of sincerity. And so sincerity is the absence of pretense, deceit, and hypocrisy. And for me, the two things that spring to mind are submitting yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing an action sincerely for the sake of Allah with no other motive, and also being humble, having a low estimate of ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and realizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our Lord and that we are his slave, and that's the reason for our existence. So.
Yeah, subhanAllah, that's a really good way of looking at it, because when you kind of went with the dictionary definition, I was like, yeah, I kind of see it that way for myself as well, because you think, for me, sincerity would mean, not doing things to please other people, not trying to show off, not trying to grab other people's attention or get their praise. So that, for me, would mean sincerity, but I don't know, what does it mean to you, Laika?
So for me, it's two things. First, it's purity of the heart. And there was actually a quote I read from a piece by Yasmin Mujahid, but it's got nothing to do with sincerity, but I think it really relates. And and so there are some who spend their whole lives seeking, sometimes giving, sometimes taking, sometimes chasing, but often just waiting. And I feel like that waiting period that you have, in your life, it's kind of like that moment of self-reflection, that kind of moment of self-purity. So, purifying the heart and kind of having good intention. So the second one is actually purity and intention. So whenever you go to do something, you think about it before you do it and have a clear mind as to what you're setting out to do. And, being God-fearing, there was actually a khutbah I went to, a Friday prayer, and the guy said, he spoke about living every moment of your life as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not there with you, but you feel like his presence, that the reason why you're here is because you're trying to please God, as Sister Lisa said. And I feel like, for me, sincerity just basically means purity, cleansing the mind, cleansing the soul, and just understanding what your purpose is and understanding what is expected of you. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to be, you're always going to be held accountable for everything you do. So, yeah, that's
about making sure that you're doing things for the right reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we kind of lose that along the way. Sometimes we get sidetracked a little bit. But Sharmin, what does Ikhlas mean to you?
To me, it's mainly when your internal and external actions are the same, when your intentions sort of don't betray your actions, and when you do something without being too proud or without expecting something like a thank you from someone when you help them, because that's when you can tell whether you're doing it for the people, whether you're doing it for Allah. And also kind of just being able to sort of suppress your nafs when it comes to these things for the greater good. So, for example, when calamity strikes, knowing that, to not get angry that easily, because that's at the times when you're tested.
Yes, subhanAllah, you say you're trying to suppress your nafs. I think our nafs are sort of our egos. They're it's one of the biggest challenges that we have when it comes to, maintaining our sincerity and making sure that we're doing things for the right reasons. Because a lot of the time, we're human, we're weak, sometimes we think like, if I do this, then, I'll get to point B a lot quicker than if I took, this route, or if I were honest about it or something. And you know, it's quite hard, I think, living sort of in the life that we live today, to kind of make sure that we're maintaining that sincerity, especially when it comes to you know, your intentions, and making sure that your intentions are pure. Like you said, you know, you've got to have a moment where you reflect on what you're doing. But how do you make sure that you have complete sincerity in your intentions and in your actions, Sister Nisa?
Well, a recent example for me was I went to Hajj. And before that, the reason why I wanted to go to Hajj is because, alhamdulillah, I started practicing a few years ago. And I felt now I've got married, I've got someone to go with. This is like my duty, it's an obligation for me. So really it was more a tick box exercise. So this is what my intention was at the outset. But during Hajj, alhamdulillah, it was so much more than that. It was a profound, life-changing experience. And, you know, it became more, and through our religious guide, what he spoke about, more about trying to attain the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing everything for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I thought that was a really powerful point, and something we should be striving to do with all of our deeds, doing it for the love of Allah.
Because subhanAllah, we forget that Allah is all merciful, and we always tend to think of, you know, the fear and the punishments, and we tend to forget that Allah loves us more than our mothers love us, and you know that inshallah that whatever good deed that we do, it will be recompensed, will be rewarded. But Sister Laika, tell us a little bit more about how we can make sure that our intentions and our actions actually are, you know, coinciding together.
I feel like when I spoke about self-reflection, it's kind of like you sit down, you kind of think about exactly what you're doing, then your actions will kind of coincide with that. So that intention is always necessary to have. So if you go and act without even thinking about something, you're more likely to do something wrong, rather than if you think about it before you do it. You know, a lot of people say think before you speak, because you're less likely to say something, you know, bad, or, you know, you're less likely to swear because you're thinking about exactly what you're going to be saying and doing. So I feel like with intention comes good actions. You know, if you have a clear mind and you have a clear heart, then, you know, your intention will always reflect in your actions.
Yeah, I mean, subhanAllah, it's one of those things that, yeah, absolutely, so you have to stop and think. And I think it's one of the things that we have to constantly remind ourselves, because it's so easy to get caught up in everything that we're doing. Everyone's so super busy. Yep. There's always so many. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Women's AM. We are continuing our discussion on Ikhlas, sincerity, today with Sisters Shamin, Laika and Sister Lisa. So we talked about you know, the significance of Surah Ikhlas and the sort of lessons that we can draw from that. And just before going on the break, I cut you off, Shamin. You wanted to mention a few points about this surah as well.
I mean, I just wanted to add a bit more context to what Laika was mentioning. So this was revealed at a time when Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he reported that the Quraysh said to the Prophet, peace be upon him, you know, tell us of your ancestry, because they wanted to know about, you know, who he was, who is God, who he was preaching about. And this is authentic as well. It's in Bukhari and Tirmidhi. And there's been other occasions as well where different people had come up to the Prophet to kind of make that, you know, same questioning him about the nature of God, including the Christians of Najran and the Jewish rabbis as well, who came up to the Prophet. So whenever they question him about this, his response was with this particular surah. This was the response. And the proclamation of that is the Tawheed. This is what the main thing that it's mentioning. It's about bringing people, informing them of who God is and what his attributes are, what the nature of God is.
You know what, that's a really good point, is that the importance of actually reiterating the Tawheed and remembering the oneness of Allah. Because I think we live in a world where, you know, people look up to you know, other things for their guidance and as their role models and as their idols. And, you know, it's, you know, today there's many types of religions, and we're not talking about the sort of religions that everyone knows about. When they think of religion, they think about Islam, Judaism, Christian, Hinduism. No, today even money has become a religion. So there's so many different things that people look towards when it comes to how they want to live their lives and where they want to go. So reiterating the Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, is very, very important, especially this day and age. But when and you talked about the Prophet ﷺ and the way people came and always came towards him and questioned him, what examples can we learn from him as a person when it comes to sincerity and ikhlas? Sister Lisa.
So in Al-Bukhari and Muslim, it was narrated that Umar radiallahu anhu, he heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that verily the reward of deeds depends upon niyyah, intention, and every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So a practical point that I learned from this is that we should strive to have multiple intentions so that we can get more and more rewards. So for example, if I'm cleaning my house, I'm cleaning it because cleanliness is part of our faith. Because when my husband comes home from a long day of work, he doesn't want to see a mess. And so that my children can have a safe environment to play in.
SubhanAllah, I think you said it really beautifully there, is that intention is not just about making one intention, it's about incorporating so many different things. And I think sometimes we do forget about the fact that, you know, we can get so many rewards in doing so many different things. And I think I remember hearing when I was young, I can't remember exactly where it was from, but it stuck with me ever since. And I think I was about 11 or 12 when I heard this, which was that the Sahabas used to actually compete with one another in doing good deeds.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, so-and-so is doing that, well, I'm going to do double that. And I'm going to do that as well as extra. And I used to think to myself, oh wow, that's amazing. I didn't know you can compete in doing good deeds, because a lot of the times you're told, no, you know, don't try and overtake what other people are doing, you know, you've got to be nice and things like that. But you know, there is that sort of competition in doing good deeds, not because you want to upstage the other person, but because you want to gain as much reward from Allah as well. So I think, subhanAllah, there's so many things that we can look at.
I've actually got a story to tell you about Abi bin Kab, and he recited a verse in front of the Sahaba, and Hazrat Umar was there as well, and he was the second Khalifa at the time, and he read the verse, and Umar bin Khattab said, he rejected the manner in which it was recited. He said, no, you've spoken a lie. And Abi bin Kab replied, no, you're a bigger liar, because you know, I read it right, but someone interrupted and said, you're contradicting, you know, Amir al-Mu'mineen and the second Khalifa. How could you do that? But Abi bin Kab said, I pay more regard to the Amir al-Mu'mineen when he is right, but I have opposed him in a matter of incorrect pronunciation of Allah's book, and not contradicting him in a matter of correct pronunciation of the book. And I've heard the Prophet Muhammad recite it in this way. And Umar radiallahu anhu replied, and he said, you know, you're perfectly right. I just tried to test whether anybody could speak the truth in front of me. And it was actually, you know, it teaches me that, you know, we're kind of afraid in front of people with authority to kind of say, no, you've done something wrong, because, like, no, that's not my place to do so. But I think it's really important, if someone is wrong, you should say it, and you should be very clear about what the position is, especially with the faith. That Abi bin Kab wasn't afraid to say, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you're a liar, you know, I'm not lying about, you know, the certain verse. So it's very, very inspirational, that.
But then again, even that in itself kind of shows the sincerity that he had towards his deen as well. So it's not even just about having a fear of somebody in authority or not having the fear of somebody in authority. It's about propagating that truth. And as we know, the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, even if it's only one verse, you know, you go out and teach that. And so he knew that, subhanAllah, he was correct in what he was saying, and he didn't stand down because he thought, you know what, this is the truth, I have to propagate that. So subhanAllah, there are so many things that we can kind of take from the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba as well when it comes to making sure that we have that sincerity. Because I think we, like you said, sometimes we place people above ourselves, you know, we put them on a pedestal that maybe sometimes they don't even deserve to be in. So it's about knowing where we stand with Allah as well.
Sometimes I think that you could also get lost in when you're seeking sincerity, you don't really know why you're doing it, so you fall into this, like if you find yourself in the masjid and stuff, but you're kind of trying to show off a good deed. You know, when people these days, they take selfies of themselves donating like £1 or something, you know, displaying their deeds publicly and stuff, whereas back in the Prophet's time they used to do it in secret, because, you know, it's more powerful that way. Allah has to see it, no one else has to see it. So being sincere in our actions too. But I think when you're showing off, you fall into the opposite of that, which is called riyah. So you fall into the opposite of sincerity, which is actually kind of, it's a minor sin, but it is dangerous, because you don't want to please the people, you have to do it for Allah.
I think that's a really important thing. I think because sometimes when we do things for the sake of other people, we end up sometimes not even doing the right thing. Because sometimes we feel we're so focused on pleasing a person that we forget that actually maybe what it is that they want or what it is that they expect from us is actually incorrect. You know, it's something that may be harming ourselves, our relationship with others, and our relationship with Allah as well.
Exactly. But also in this day and age of the media, I think there's people's deeds are always displayed publicly. It's like they want to publicise their deeds of how much Quran they read, when they went to the masjid, and all the things that they've done throughout the day. And I think they have to be careful with that kind of stuff. as well, because I don't think, I mean, yeah, it could encourage people to do good, but every second of your life doesn't have to be on the media to show what good you've done, because you don't have to do this to impress people.
But then again, subhanAllah, like we've been talking about, it's about the intention in which you're doing such action. So if it is with the intention that you want to encourage, say for example, if you've got a large following of young people, you want to encourage them to do something good, and you've got the intention of showing such a picture or such a clip because you want to encourage them to do something good, then inshallah your reward remains with Allah. And I think sometimes we have to remember that we don't know what the intentions are behind a certain action. I think sometimes it's always best we know that Allah is the judge, but if someone is not doing something wrong, outwardly wrong, that we know is that's perfectly acceptable Islamically, then we should kind of leave them to that and inshallah expect that they're doing it for the best of intentions. But I think when it comes to implementing certain things in our lives, especially when it comes to maintaining that sincerity, what kind of advice can we give to anyone that might be watching today?
So I've got a bit of a humorous point. So what I'm trying at the moment is post-it notes, like coloured post-it notes, as prompts around the house, like in the bedroom, in the kitchen, living room, and it's got the words Bismillah, in sincerity and intention in brackets multiple, so we can have multiple intentions. And so I've got these as prompts everywhere, like even in the outside the door, so it helps me. And sometimes it does blend into the furniture, but sometimes it is useful. Like yesterday before I was going to sleep, I saw it, and then I thought, okay, let's make some intention for why I'm sleeping. I'm sleeping so that this can, I'll be refreshed for the next day, so that I can perform my ibadah in the best manner possible.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think sometimes we do kind of think like we've got to cram so much stuff in that we tend to forget about the fact that, that Allah created day and night for us to do for different purposes. So created day so that we can maximize that time in our acts of worship and gaining a livelihood, and He gave us the night so that we can rest, and inshallah also make a portion of that for ibadah as well. So it's quite nice that you mentioned that. But I wanted to ask you something a little bit more specific. Since you're young, mashallah, and you're at university, what sort of things that you've come across while being at university, especially when it comes to this topic of ikhlas and sincerity and maintaining that?
I think one example I could give you is, when you're working in a class and you've got group work to do, and you kind of think, I always end up doing all the work anyway because I'm very particular about how I want things to be. But I think being sincere in helping other people, usually you're like, you just give them a couple of pointers and be like, you do it by yourself. Uni is all about being independent, and I feel like I got into the kind of wrong way of being like, I want to do this for myself, I want to get good grades myself, and thinking that, if you want to get good grades, you work by yourself, work hard yourself. But I feel like having sincerity, when you're in that kind of education kind of workspace, is wanting for your brother what you want for yourself. And, that's a hadith. It's very, very important that you love whatever you want for yourself, you kind of help other people in achieving that as well. And we kind of spoke about thinking about other people before ourselves, but it is important about thinking other people. Islam does teach us to love for everyone what we love for ourselves, so it's an important point.
So how have you kind of reined back on that sort of attitude then?
I think for me, it's, I was telling Lisa before the show, the fact that I talk about my day before I go to sleep with someone. So if I talk about with my friends or my sisters, and it kind of makes you be accountable for your day. Sometimes the day just goes past, you don't even think about it, and it's just gone, you never remember it again. But if you talk about it, it's kind of solidified, and you'll remember everything you did. And if you've done something wrong, you're made to think about it and go and apologise for whatever you did wrong. So I think talking about it is really important. Self-reflection doesn't have to be writing a journal or just thinking about it before you go to sleep. You could actually have a conversation about it, and it makes the day real. So for me, that's been really important.
What I thought was really powerful about what you were saying to me before the show was that you're taking account of your day now, because you don't want to just leave it for the day of judgment. Yeah. And of course we're all going to be held for account then, but it's good to take that stock now as we're going. So
yes, because then you can see where you've gone wrong and you can rectify that. So like you said, if you've done something to someone and you actually need to apologise to someone, it's good that you do that now rather than when you're held accountable for those actions. So that's a really good point. I think I might take that one on. I'll start having having conversations about how my days went. Shaman, what other sort of tips can you give to anyone about maintaining Ikhlas?
There's a dua actually for Ikhlas, which you'll find in the Fortress of the Muslim. You have to repeat it 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening, and you can also do it in sujood as well. And it's actually interesting because in the Shafi'i madhab, you have to actually do this, you purify your heart before you pray all the time, which I think is really good, and we should try implementing that as well, just to know exactly who you're praying for, why you're praying as well. And also, one way to move off, if you do find yourself kind of straining yourself towards riyah, doing the opposite of sincerity, you should try and think that, okay, people kind of don't exist right now. Just think that, you know, you can only see Allah and Allah is in front of you, and I think that's the best way when it comes to prayer and around people, because you don't want to be prolonging your prayer just because someone's there.
Yeah, no, that is true. But then there's the opposite thing that I've seen, or I've heard actually, is that people don't do extra prayers or extra things because they feel like people are going to think that they're actually just doing it to show off, especially if it's in a public setting. So, for example, if you're at uni and it's in the prayer room, or if you're in the masjid, and they kind of hold back because they don't want to be seen as though they're just being extra. You know, they're just trying to get everybody's attention because they're doing something, you know, a little bit more than what everyone else is doing, which is kind of the opposite of like...
It's interesting.
Which is interesting.
I have seen that happen before.
SubhanAllah, but I think, again, that also goes back to intention. So if you know that you're doing it for the sake of Allah, then it doesn't really matter what people think. So, inshallah, we hope that, you know, people watching today have all kind of taken something from this, and I, inshallah, have done, and I will be implementing some of the stuff that you've said. Well, sincerity is something which allows us to become better people and ultimately better Muslims. It is with sincerity that we can help the Ummah with pure intentions and not to be solely concerned with our own selfish gains. This has been a really great discussion, but if you've missed any of today's show, you can catch a repeat tonight at 11 p.m, or you can catch up with the highlights from this week on Sunday at 3 p.m, or alternatively, you can catch us on YouTube. Take a look at this to find out how. Great competition there, so make sure you don't miss out. And if you haven't seen it already, we now have a regular feature in Elma magazine, the publication of the Dawah project. So look out for us in this and future editions in the magazine, inshallah. Well, I'd like to say Jazakallah khair to all our sisters on the panel, and in particular our special guest this morning, Sister Lisa Aslam, and of course to you at home, our viewers. And remember, inshallah, to remember to love for your brother what you love for yourself. Assalamu alaikum.